In 1977, Smokey and the Bandit roared onto the silver screen like a whirlwind, turning Burt Reynolds into one of Hollywood's ultimate masculine icons. After the film, the sleek black Pontiac Trans Am speeding down southern highways became an instant legend. But the movie itself hides countless strange details and behind-the-scenes secrets, like Sally Field secretly hating the sweet final kiss scene, or Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, being such a huge fan that he rewatched it during his final days. And there's even more that's hard to believe, like Jackie Gleason improvising almost all of Sheriff Justice's dialogue. So how many secrets have you missed when watching this classic film? Let's uncover 30 weird little details you may never have noticed. 30. Needham threatened to kill Jerry if he changed the theme song. The explosive anthem of Smokey and the Bandit Eastbound and Down was born from a sleepless night of pressure and determination. Jerry Reed, who played Cletus and was tasked with writing the movie's theme song, still had nothing ready as the deadline loomed. After promising Needham he'd deliver, Reed stayed up all night with coffee and his guitar, hammering out the immortal chorus before performing it for Needham the next morning. When Needham listened silently, Reed nervously said, "If you don't like it, I can change it." The director shot back coldly, "If you change one damn note, I'll kill you." And so Eastbound and Down remained untouched, a pure speed anthem that burned itself into movie history and gave the film its beating heart. 29. Network censors cleaned it up. When Smokey and the Bandit first aired on American television in the early 1980s, censors had to clean up lines deemed offensive. The most noticeable change was Buford's trademark insult sumbitch, which was dubbed over as the nonsense phrase "scum bum." Ironically, "scum bum" quickly caught on with kids and became a popular playground catchphrase. By 2007, Hot Wheels even released a 1970s Firebird Trans Am toy with "scum bum" emblazoned on the back, transforming what was meant as a clumsy censorship fix into an iconic pop culture quirk. 28. Burt Reynolds and Sally Field fell in love off-screen. Burt Reynolds and Sally Field first met on the set of Smokey and the Bandit in 1977, and their chemistry instantly carried off-screen. They quickly became Hollywood's golden couple, dating passionately for 5 years. Reynolds often confessed that Sally was the great love of his life, and the press hailed them as a perfect mix of glamour and fire. Together, they starred in multiple films, and for a time, it seemed nothing could break their bond. But behind the romance lay turbulence. In her memoir, In Pieces Field revealed the relationship wasn't as blissful as it appeared. She admitted she loved Reynolds deeply, but also felt controlled and pressured. They split in 1982 and barely spoke for the next 30 years. Still until his death, Reynolds called Sally the one woman he could never forget, while Field carried bittersweet memories of a love that was both legendary and painful. What do you think of this iconic couple? Let us know in the comments. 27. 5 Pontiac Trans Ams were sacrificed. Pontiac supplied 5 special Trans Ams for the filming of Smokey and the Bandit, and nearly all were wrecked by the demanding stunts. One car was souped up with a larger engine to make the famous broken bridge jump, leaving the body mangled beyond repair. By the end of shooting, only one car remained relatively intact, the promotional Trans Am used for marketing, not the daredevil action sequences. 26. Most of the film was shot in Georgia, not Texas. Although the plot follows a bootlegging run from Texas to Georgia, most of the film wasn't shot in Texas at all. Instead, production was based in Georgia, particularly around Atlanta and the town of Jonesboro. Jonesboro was even dressed up as Texarkana, the starting point of the journey. The choice not only cut costs, but also provided the perfect highways and scenery for high-speed chases. 25. CB radio culture fueled the film. In the 1970s, CB radio exploded in popularity with long-haul truckers, and Smokey and the Bandit tapped straight into that craze. On the CB, every driver had to handle a unique nickname for identity and style. That's how Burt Reynolds became Bandit, and Jerry Reed was Snowman. The slang was real too. Smokey or Smokey Bear was trucker code for a highway patrol officer named after the wide-brimmed hats that resembled Smokey Bear's ranger cap. The film brought this underground language to mainstream audiences, giving it a gritty authenticity and letting viewers feel part of the rowdy highway subculture of the 1970s. 24. Sally Field didn't enjoy the famous kiss. Director Hal Needham encouraged improvisation on set, and many of the film's funniest lines came from the actors themselves. Reynolds and Field often ad-libbed, feeding their on-screen chemistry. The most memorable moment was their big kiss, but later Field admitted she didn't actually enjoy it. She complained that Reynolds was a little too slobbery, making the moment far from glamorous. Yet, ironically, that raw imperfection gave the kiss a realism audiences loved, making it one of the most iconic moments in the movie. What's your take on that kiss, romantic or awkward? 23. Transporting Coors. Beer was illegal at the time. In the 1970s, Coors beer was practically a luxury item in the eastern United States. Not because it was a high-class brand, but because Coors lacked the pasteurization and preservation technology needed to survive long-distance shipping without spoiling. As a result, Coors was only sold in certain western states and was completely unavailable in the East. Having a can of Coors in Atlanta or New York back then was like owning contraband rare and highly coveted. Smokey and the Bandit capitalized on this reality for its plot smuggling 400 cases of Coors from Texarkana, Texas to Atlanta in 28 hours, a mission that was not only illegal, but also a race against both time and the law. This detail didn't just add dramatic tension to the film, it reflected a real truth of the era Coors was not available east of Texas. 22. Trans Am sales skyrocketed after the film. When Smokey and the Bandit premiered in 1977, the black and gold Pontiac Trans Am stole the show like a true star. After the film, Trans Am sales surged dramatically from about 46,701 units in 1976 to 68,745 in 1977, then 93 in 1978, and peaking in 1979 with over 117,000 units surpassing its longtime rival, the Chevrolet Camaro, for the first time in history. With its massive screaming chicken hood decal stylish, T-top roof and rebellious aura of freedom, the Trans Am became America's highway dream, a living example of cinema's power, a single film turning a car into a legend and igniting an unprecedented sales frenzy. 21. Most of Jackie Gleason's lines were improvised. Sheriff Buford T. Justice, both infuriating and hilarious in Smokey and the Bandit, was brought to life not just by the script, but also by Jackie Gleason's masterful improvisation. Rather than sticking to the written dialogue, Gleason often let the character run wild, adding curse words, sarcastic jabs, and off-the-cuff exchanges only he could invent. The cafe scene where Buford and Bandit unexpectedly come face to face, never part of the original script, became iconic thanks to Gleason's spontaneous genius. Every shouted sumbitch, every insult hurled at his dim-witted son, and even the bizarre one-liners that made audiences burst out laughing bore his personal stamp. That freedom transformed Buford from a secondary lawman role into a comedic icon of American cinema, a character both loved and hated at once and the irreplaceable comic soul of the film. 20. Junior Justice was added at Gleason's request. Interestingly, even the character of Junior Justice, the dim-witted, meek son who spends the entire movie getting berated by his father, was not in the original script. Jackie Gleason, upon accepting the role of Buford, bluntly told director Hal Needham, "I can't sit in a car by myself for the whole film. I need someone to talk to." That's how Junior was created, essentially as a shadow for Buford to yell at, giving Gleason endless opportunities to fire off his outrageous rants and insults. Junior's presence not only highlighted Buford's domineering and abrasive personality, but also gave audiences plenty of laughs through their father-son dynamic. One side, a hot-headed sheriff spewing curses, the other, a silent block of wood nodding along. Did you find Junior memorable? Share your thoughts in the comments. 19. A real accident made it into the film. One of the most memorable moments in Smokey and the Bandit actually came from an on-set accident, when the Trans Am tears through a baseball field and unexpectedly smashes into the dugout stands that wasn't in the script. Instead of cutting it, Hal Needham decided to keep the footage because it looked cinematic and added to the reckless wild energy of the chase. After the crash, the crew had to improvise quickly. They erected a wooden sign behind the dugout to cover the damage, then edited the shots so the car looked untouched. That blend of spontaneous disaster and clever backstage problem-solving gave the film a gritty authenticity, adding to its irresistible outlaw charm. 18. Alfred Hitchcock was a huge fan. Few would guess that Smokey and the Bandit, with its asphalt cowboy vibe and wild car chases, had a surprising superfan legendary director, Alfred Hitchcock. His daughter revealed that this was one of the last films Hitchcock watched repeatedly in his final years, almost obsessively. With his keen cinematic eye, Hitchcock was captivated not just by the fast pacing and thrilling stunts, but also by the delicate balance of tension and comedy. This unexpected admiration proved that Smokey and the Bandit was far from a disposable popcorn flick. It carried a magnetic cinematic power strong enough to impress one of the toughest critics in Hollywood history. 17. Buford T. Justice was inspired by a real person. The infamous Buford T. Justice wasn't purely fictional. He was based on a real cop Burt Reynolds' father once knew. Reynolds' father, the police chief of Riviera Beach, Florida, often told stories of a notoriously foul-mouthed rough officer whose every sentence seemed to end with "you son of a bitch." Reynolds passed this colourful description along to Jackie Gleason, who immediately infused it into his performance. The result, Buford came to life as both frighteningly authentic and hilariously over the top. Thanks to that real-life inspiration, audiences believed there really could be sheriffs out there, this hot-tempered, crude and unforgettable. 16. Born from a joke but became a hit. The origins of Smokey and the Bandit didn't start in a Hollywood boardroom, but from a wild joke between Burt Reynolds and his roommate, stuntman-turned-director Hal Needham. Needham once personally hauled a truck full of Coors beer from Texas to Georgia, despite it being technically illegal since Coors couldn't be sold east of the Rockies at the time. That bizarre adventure sparked the idea for a film. Needham scribbled the script on yellow notepads, and when Reynolds first read it, he laughed and declared it the worst script he'd ever seen. Yet instead of rejecting it, Reynolds agreed to star, believing that sometimes the craziest, funniest ideas turn into the biggest surprises. He was right. From that private joke grew a box office smash that ignited a cultural phenomenon. 15. Reynolds' Trans Am was sold at auction. Burt Reynolds himself owned a 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Special Edition, equipped with its original 6.6-litre V8 engine, 180 horsepower. T-tops, air conditioning and automatic transmission. Pontiac gifted it to him as thanks for catapulting the car into stardom with the movie. Reynolds kept the car at his ranch in Jupiter, Florida, until his death in 2018. Afterward, ownership passed to his friend Gene Kennedy, who said Reynolds wanted him to preserve and display it as part of his legacy. But in 2022, the car went under the hammer at Barrett-Jackson. Fully restored in 2015, it fetched a staggering $495,000, far exceeding the value of any other 1977 Trans Am. The Mulberry Bridge jump was carefully engineered. Pulling off stunts in the 1970s meant no CGI safety nets. Everything had to be done for real. That included the iconic scene where the Bandit's Trans Am leaps across the broken Mulberry Bridge. While the car had enough torque and horsepower to launch gravity, was still the ultimate enemy. Some online rumours claim rocket boosters were added for the jump, but in truth, Hal Needham explained that the car was outfitted by a NASCAR garage with a 700 horsepower engine and manual transmission. That gave it just enough power to clear the gap, making one of cinema's most jaw-dropping jumps completely authentic. 13. Most actors dubbed their lines but not Gleason. When Smokey and the Bandit was edited for network TV, most of the cast redubbed their lines to remove profanity. Jackie Gleason, however, refused. To fill the gap, producers hired Henry Corden, the voice actor, famous for Fred Flintstone, to overdub much of Sheriff Buford T. Justice's dialogue. The choice was oddly fitting. Fred Flintstone was originally inspired by Gleason's own legendary sitcom role as Ralph Cramden in The Honeymooners. In fact, The Flintstones was modelled directly on Gleason's show. So by having Corden borrow Gleason's voice for Smokey and the Bandit, the film unknowingly completed a curious cultural loop. What do you think of this strange little Hollywood twist? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. 12. Hal Needham lived with Burt Reynolds for 12 years. Hal Needham wasn't just a stunt genius, he was an innovator who changed Hollywood safety forever. After seeing pole vault airbags, he adapted the idea for stunt falls, making high jumps survivable. He also created the legendary car cannon for vehicle flips and the shotmaker camera crane, which captured breathtaking action shots. Behind the scenes, he and Burt Reynolds shared an extraordinary friendship. After Needham's divorce, Reynolds invited him to live in his guest house in Holmby Hills, and he stayed for nearly 12 years. They weren't just collaborators, they were brothers under one roof, bleeding, sweating and laughing their way into cinema history together. 11. The dinner scene was completely improvised. One of the quirkiest highlights of Smokey and the Bandit is the dinner scene with the Diablo sandwich, something that wasn't in the script at all. Jackie Gleason made it up on the spot. The Diablo sandwich, essentially a spicier cousin of the Sloppy Joe Swap's standard seasoning for a fiery Mexican-style mix of taco spices, chili sauce, canned corn, diced tomatoes, and sometimes jalapenos. Wrapped in warm bread and paired with a Dr. Pepper, it became an unexpectedly iconic screen meal. Many fans still consider it one of cinema's greatest food moments, a lasting testament to Gleason's improvisational brilliance. 10. Burt Reynolds received $1 million for the role. With a background mostly as a stuntman, Needham faced enormous difficulties convincing any studio or producer to take his project seriously. He only gained traction after his friend Reynolds, who at the time was the #1 box office star in the world, agreed to join. Burt received $1 million for his role, leaving Needham just $3.3 million to actually make the film. 9. Sally Field was cast because of an accident. At 30 years old, Sally Field had already built a reputation on television, with roles like Gidget and the Flying Nun parts that made her recognisable, but also risked typecasting her as a sitcom star unfit for serious film roles. When Burt Reynolds and the Smokey and the Bandit team were looking for someone to play Carrie, they saw something different in Sally charm warmth, but also enough grit not to be overshadowed in chase sequences action or comedy opposite Reynolds. Field was hesitant at first. She worried that accepting the role would lock her into comedy forever, an industry she knew well but had also felt confined by. Ultimately, she accepted the role not because of the dazzling script Smokey and the Bandit was even dismissed as a fun, irreverent project at times, but because she needed a leading role in a big screen film to break out of her TV image to step out from the shadow of the flying nun or Gidget. The role revived her career after a string of flops, eventually leading to her Oscar win for Norma Rae, 1979. What do you think of Sally's performance in the film? Share your thoughts below. 8. A box office giant and cultural icon. Smokey and the Bandit turned into a phenomenon Hollywood never saw coming. With a production budget of just $4.3 million, the film seemed like a light action comedy. But once it hit theaters, it immediately won audiences over with breakneck pacing, adrenaline-pumping car stunts, and the irresistible charm of Burt Reynolds and Sally Field. What started as southern fun spread like wildfire nationwide, pulling massive crowds into theaters and fueling America's muscle car craze. The result, the film grossed $126.7 million in North America alone, a staggering number for the late 1970s. This success made Smokey and the Bandit the third highest grossing film of 1977, trailing only the history-making blockbusters Star Wars Episode IV, A New Hope and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. From a script once dismissed as silly and a shoestring budget, the movie not only filled studio coffers, but also etched itself into film history as a timeless action comedy classic. 7. Jerry Reed was originally cast as the Bandit. Long before Needham secured Universal's backing, he had envisioned someone other than Reynolds as the lead. That person was Jerry Reed, who was set to play the Bandit when the film's budget was only $1 million. But once Reynolds signed on, Needham upgraded him to the starring role. Reed was reassigned to play Snowman Bandit's partner and absolutely nailed it. 6. Burt Reynolds helped cast the film's dog. In Smokey and the Bandit, it wasn't just Burt Reynolds or Sally Field who stole the show. Snowman's Basset Hound. Fred became one of the most beloved stars of all. Interestingly, it was Reynolds himself who picked Fred. And the reason is almost unbelievable, because the dog wouldn't listen to anyone. That stubborn, clueless, rule-breaking nature made Fred a natural comic relief, adding irresistible charm to the film. What seemed like an odd choice turned out to prove that sometimes not acting is the most authentic performance of all. Something even human actors can't always pull off. Did you fall in love with Fred too? Share your favourite memory of him in the comments. 5. The TV spin-off series flopped. Few people know that after the massive success of Smokey and the Bandit, the franchise expanded both onto television and into a third film. In 1994, Universal Television launched a 4-part TV movie series titled Bandit under the action-packed lineup, starring Brian Bloom as a younger version of Bo Bandit Darville, the role Burt Reynolds had made iconic. The episodes included Bandit Goes Country, Bandit Bandit Beauty, and The Bandit and Bandit's Silver Angel. Interestingly, original director Hal Needham was also involved as a producer, blending nostalgia with an attempt to reboot the legend. Meanwhile, the third theatrical film, Smokey and the Bandit Part 3, 1983, stirred heavy controversy. Initially titled Smokey is the Bandit, the film's wild concept was to have Jackie Gleason play both Buford T. Justice and the Bandit. But test screenings left audiences baffled, forcing the filmmakers to reshoot Bandit scenes with Jerry Reed as the lead. Burt Reynolds only appeared briefly at the end in a cameo. The result was a box office disaster grossing just $7 million against a $9 million budget, the darkest blemish on the franchise's legacy. 4. Filming at Lakewood Speedway. One of the most memorable settings in Smokey and the Bandit was Lakewood Speedway in Atlanta, home to the opening truck rodeo scene and the chaotic racing sequences. The crew also used the nearby Lakewood Fairgrounds, including the old Greyhound wooden roller coaster, long abandoned, as a unique backdrop. By Smokey and the Bandit 2, 1980, the Greyhound not only appeared on screen, but was spectacularly destroyed in a dramatic action set piece. 3. Burt Reynolds did most of his own stunts. Burt Reynolds had once been a stuntman before becoming a star, and that heritage burned bright in Smokey and the Bandit. He personally drove through most of the high-speed chases, from breathtaking drifts on highways to tire-screeching, smoke-filled accelerations that had audiences gripping their seats. Reynolds wanted raw authenticity to literally merge with the roar of the engine instead of standing on the sidelines. Only the most dangerous feats, like the infamous bridge jump, were handed over to professional stunt drivers. Reynolds later admitted, "I did a lot of crazy things not for the money, but for fun." And that reckless joy is what made every frame explode with energy, forever cementing his performance in fans' memories. 2. The Ban 1 plate disappears in a scene. The Ban 1 license plate on Bandit's Pontiac Trans Am is one of the film's most iconic details. But it doesn't always appear on camera. In the scene where Bandit gets pinned by police, as the bridge collapses, a rear shot shows the Trans Am without its plate, Ban 1, vanishing, as if it too were hiding from Sheriff Buford T. Justice. 1. A small continuity error you may have missed. In one tense moment of Smokey and the Bandit, we see Sheriff Buford T. Justice jump out of his police car with the driver's door wide open. Moments later, when the camera angle shifts, the door is suddenly closed, only for a passing truck to sideswipe it, knocking it nearly off its hinges. Yet, in the very next cut, the door is mysteriously back in place as if nothing ever happened. Door open, door shut, door smashed, then shut again. Dialogue angles and lighting, juggling inconsistencies frame by frame. It's a clear continuity error. 30 quirky details from Smokey and the Bandit show that this classic wasn't just a high-octane chase movie, but also a treasure trove of hidden gems. These little things make fans love it even more, turning the film into an irreplaceable piece of pop culture. Now, the real question is, out of these 30 details, how many did you notice while watching? Were there moments that made you laugh or exclaim, "Wow, I never caught that before"? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video fun, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into another timeless classic. Thanks for watching,